Expanding the list of basic foodstuffs exempt from value-added tax. This follows the VAT increase from 14 to 15%, as announced by the former Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba last Wednesday. New Communications Minister Nomvula Mokonyane has briefed the media in Parliament about the outcomes of yesterday's meeting of the new cabinet.
There's been a public outcry about the VAT increase, the first in 25 years. Cabinet is now considering placing additional foodstuffs on the list of zero-rated products.
Part of what we would be doing is to further explain the issue of VAT, precisely because of how it has also been presented to an extent where it created a lot of confusion. Secondly, it is about getting feedback from South African citizens to say, let's look at other issues, things that are beyond the control of the most vulnerable.
There was no discussion on the review of the size of cabinet as announced by President Cyril Ramaphosa in his State of the Nation address. Also not on the agenda, the looming Constitutional Court deadline of April 1st for SASSA to find a new social grants distribution agent.
On the timelines for reconfiguration, no, it was not a subject to cabinet. SASSA, no, it was not.
Cabinet sent condolences to the families of the police officers and soldier killed in the recent Ngobo shootings. Lukhanyo Khalata, SABC News, Parliament.
Well, our reporter Lukhanyo Khalata joins us now for more on this. He's in our parliamentary studios. Lukhanyo, good afternoon to you. So, as you said in your story there, the Communications Minister not talking about the size of cabinet, not talking about social grants, but we did hear something on VAT. And is this good news?
Hi, Natasha. Good afternoon. I think what's happening is an admission, in essence, from the government, or at least from cabinet, that the VAT increase, did not go down well as expected, by the public. So now I think government is, in essence, trying to save face and saying, let's go back to the table. Let's see what other items we can, zero rate to try and make sure that the poor people are not as harshly affected by the increase in VAT. Natasha, I really think that it's an admission from the government, in essence, that maybe the timing, or at least the announcement of the VAT increase, was done a little bit prematurely and a little bit ill-conceived. So now government is trying to going back to the table to try and rescue a situation that could have been avoided or could have been prevented had the right decisions or had the right measures been taken before the announcement by the Finance Minister last week. Natasha?
Absolutely. All right. So they also spoke a bit about the green paper on a roads policy to ensure better roads and better managed roads in the country. Tell us a bit about this.
Natasha, those are all obviously bills that are still to come to Parliament, that needs to then be discussed and then obviously still taken out for public hearings. But I think, I don't have to tell you that the state of South African roads, leaves a lot to be desired. There's very few towns and cities in the country where you're not confronted by potholes and those kinds of things. So I think this is also a step obviously in the right direction to say that there is a problem with the country's roads, and they need to be fixed, because in essence the roads do contribute quite a lot to our economy. I think trucks and road going vehicles contribute a lot to the South African economy, so it is always important to have the state of South African roads in as healthy a state as what you can get them. Natasha?
Definitely. And then also more events planned to celebrate the Nelson Mandela centenary. South Africans encouraged to emulate his values, and also talk on a date or no date yet announced for elections next year.
Natasha, I think the minister was, very careful in how she dealt with the issue of the elections. In essence, we all suspect, as we were sitting there in the Imbizo, for the briefing with the minister, that the election will probably take place 13 to 14 months from now, which places us next year, April, May. But the minister was obviously very careful. But the government obviously did encourage South Africans to take advantage of next week's voter registration campaign, and to make sure that South Africans are registered. If you have moved since the last election, go and register at your nearest voting station to make sure, obviously, that you are eligible and that you are registered for the elections next year. I think to move on to the Mandela centenary, I think the government and the governing party have expressed themselves on this issue that Nelson Mandela, our former statesman, would be 100 years old this year, and we should all try to live up and emulate him as much as we can. So there will be a lot of events and lectures and those kinds of issues that are planned for the rest of the year. Also, Natasha, the government will soon announce dates that it has set aside for Mamu Albertina Sisulu. She too, of course, would have been 100 years old this year. So it's almost like a double celebration, if I can call it that, Natasha.
Yeah, and then one more before I let you go. Correct me if I'm wrong, the president will be out of the country making some state visits. Is that right?
Yes, we understand that the president will be traveling to Namibia, I think to Mozambique. I'm not sure about the other two, unfortunately. But yes, the president will be out of the country, which then means that his newly sworn-in deputy president, David Mabuza, will be caretaker president, at least for the time that President Ramaphosa is out of the country. Natasha?
All right, we'll leave it there. Lukhanyo, thanks very much for that. Our Lukhanyo Galata live for us from our parliamentary studios, just touching on some of the points that came out of that briefing by Communications Minister Nomvula Mokonyane. It was her first post-cabinet briefing for 2018 and, of course, her first as the new portfolio minister.